Good afternoon, everyone. It's Thursday, July 3rd, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is I Am an Open Door, and it is finding the Advaita in A Course in Miracles. So we're here to look at A Course in Miracles with the eyes of a non-dual a student of the non-dual. And so we're looking for places where, as Ken Wapnick says, A Course in Miracles is a great Western example of non-dual teaching with a sophisticated psychological interpretation, which I think that's a perfect statement about A Course in Miracles. So welcome to the table. I will read our invocation and then ask us to just sit for a few moments, softening and being where we are, just to let this day go. So the impulse comes to gather, the quality of how we are together, how we talk. This is our gift to the world. The purpose of every gathering is discovered in the gathering. It's to recognize beauty and to love what is beautiful. Conversation rises out of every particle. It's all alive. Welcome to this empty table, a cleared place where something new can happen. When you take the hands of someone you love, what do those hands become? That's from Al-Jamai, The Gather. So let's just close our eyes for a little bit and sink into this space. Taking your seat at this table. And allow yourself to accept the invitation to quiet, to let go of whatever you brought with you to the table, whatever has followed you here. Just let it go. Know yourself completely welcome in this space. And let your eyes soften. And let the back of your head, the occiput, let that soften. And let the throat soften. And soften the heart. And soften behind the heart, the area of the shoulder blades. Let the shoulders drop and soften the whole chest area. And soften the belly. And notice how the body feels now, just with this softening. Soften the pelvic floor. And soften the sacrum. Soften the hips. Soften the feet. And soften the belly. Soften the spine. And soften the top of the head. And let the hands soften. And soften the heart once more. And just rest there in the softened heart. Breathe into it. And when you're ready, take a few deep breaths and come on back to the table. This afternoon, we're taking up in chapter 5, section 7, which is the question of karma. And what I'm going to do for this gathering is just read some of my notes, and then I'm going to open it up and just have a conversation about it. I'm going to start with the cameo 19. Some of you may have read it, most of you probably haven't, but section 7 references cameo 19, and I think it's important to just say a few words about what cameo 19 says about this section. This cameo is called the editing of the notes, the editing of the notes. And it tells us that somewhere in chapter 5, actually right around where we are now, Helen took down extensive notes about the quality of her scribing or the quality of her channeling. as well as the subject of reincarnation. It all kind of got blended together. And Ken Wapnick tells us that the notes that had to do with the quality of the writing or the editing were written on separate pieces of paper, and later they were put into one of Helen's notebooks. So it's only through Ken Wapnick that we know about Helen's dealing with the quality of how she took notes, how she scribed. And for those of us who have been listening to Paul Selig, there's a great deal of similarity between what Paul Selig goes through in terms of getting out of his way and letting the guides come through, and what Helen is doing here. So the notes moved between several topics, and most importantly, Helen's increasingly clear scribing, almost the same way Paul Selig stops talking in double sentences and begins to just flow. Right? So it's in chapter 5 that Helen just really starts to get out of her own way. Right? She gets out of the way of the voice. The Purple Book took the information on karma and put them into the section that we're going to review this afternoon. I'm not sure if it's in the Blue Book or not, but it's in the Purple Book. So that's why we're going to just take a look at that's why we're taking a look here. So in the Cameo 19, in the notes, the voice or Jesus tells Helen, your channeling is accurate, but some of the terms that you're using need clarification. And so Jesus tells, or whoever the Christ consciousness is, tells her that the early notes before chapter 5 are still a strong testimony to truth. And that's a quote. They're a strong testimony to truth. But she was a resistant channel early on, right? So Helen had been having these past life memories, and she's asking Jesus for clarification on what these past life memories mean. And the Christ consciousness, the voice, tells her, well, some of your memories are factual, some are just symbolic, and some are just unconscious projections of your ego. But he says he will work with her to make sure that the notes are free of error. So he says any error, though, is not crucial to the essential truth. So this is what Cameo 19 tells Helen. And he says essentially by chapter 5, her ego has been less and less of a block. She's become more and more unified with the ego, and she is starting what the voice calls a sharp ascent upward, moving increasingly toward unity. So by the time chapter 5 is dictated, Helen's much more in attunement, and the flow of the teachings becomes more effortless without interference. So I'm pointing this all out in the Cameo 19 just so as we go forward with chapter 5, which I think is really fantastic. It's as we come into an open door and we begin to work with together at an open door, this is actually a really great place for us all to continue this work together. So moving into the question of karma now, moving into section 7, I want to just tell you what stood out for me and then ask you, just open up the table and ask you what stood out for you. So the Christ consciousness tells Helen that most theories of reincarnation are magical, right? They're just stories. And he says the chief value of the whole idea of reincarnation comes from the fact that the stories themselves, the idea of having past lives, is just a contradiction to the religious idea that you are you are sent to a permanent hell if you sin. Western religion says, you go to hell and that's where you stay, right? But reincarnation softens that by saying, no, you just get born again, but you get to keep learning, right? But he says, that Christ says, ideas about karma are dangerous to our progress because they support the idea of a past. And that past can be used to justify or explain present circumstances. And the notes call this a genetic fallacy. What is a genetic fallacy? It's really a fallacy that uses the past to explain and justify who the person is now. Almost the same way we use the genetics of the parents to say, well, she has brown eyes because both her parents had brown eyes, or she has this certain walk because she walks the same way her mother did, or even her grandmother did. And we see this now. We see this used in the whole science of genetics now. That's just another take on magical thinking in many ways. So the genetic fallacy uses the past. So and so did this in their past life, and that's why they're coming forward in this life having such a hard life now, because they have to make up for that in their past life. And he says the main issue is it doesn't separate the past from the present. And all our power lies in the present moment, right? So Casey said that mind is the builder, but its only concern should be used for what is being built now, right? A Course in Miracles and the Edgar Casey folks were working together for a while, and Casey used the term "mind is the builder," and that's why it's in this section. So mind is what builds the body. Mind is what, and there's confusion around this issue, but I just wanted to bring this up because once again, it only matters what the mind is building right now, because it's what happens now that has any influence on the future. So then to clarify, the Christ says, curiosity about past lives is an ego attribute, right? That's what the ego's interested in. It doesn't offer true knowledge, though. And so he says it's a study of the past, but it doesn't heal present insanity, right? It uses the past to justify present insanity. And then it says, and I love this sentence, the history of a split mind is not a constructive focus. So you may have committed errors in the past, but bringing those past errors into explaining why your current mind is insane is not helpful. You see what I'm saying? So the history of a split mind is not a constructive focus for present healing. Right? So Jesus tells Helen, I'll be happy to share information about your past when it's no longer of interest to your ego. Right? Only when it's useful to help heal others, right? So the soul has no past. It is in constant beingness with God. And focus on this. Focus on this. So that's what I have to say in my notes, and I'd like to open it up for discussion. Now, who wants to who has some thoughts about this whole subject of reincarnation and karma? The whole subject of karma. Ah, Cindy, who wasn't supposed to be listening, or she was supposed to be listening, but she's found time to join us now.
I was totally joining us through I never stopped joining us. My body wants to stand during parts of the day. So when I'm just listening, standing and moving and doing my best but I'm still present.
What you got for us, Cindy? I love to poke the Cindy bear. Cindy,
Um, it's
And then
the
Mel. Woo!
my favorite line in this chapter. Well, I just got emotional. Um, it reminds me of the line. I don't know who said it. Would you rather be right or happy? Um, are you interested in healing insanity or in studying the past? And it just reminds me that that's not, you don't study the past to heal um, the current mind, period. And it's an either or question, which one do you want? And if the desire is for healing, justifying my now behavior best on justifying how I am today based on my story of where I was or where my ancestors were or anything, sort of like this reading. It makes for a really good story. It can really entertain the mind for uh, forever. Um, but it's not going to heal my mind. It actually feeds the egoic sense of a separate self over and over and over and over again. And I was just trying to remember who it was. I was listening to Jeff Bailey during a yoga session this afternoon, and he was he was talking about the importance of knowing why you were sharing a story. He said sometimes it's really useful to share a story because it has a healing element. This is what happened, and I followed my guidance in that. But he said if you watch the way the average human being tells stories, they add. You think you got a bad life, wait until you hear mine, and it's all kind of the same thing. And so I really appreciate the pointing in this section in general from Jesus saying, "I'm not telling you what really happened. Like, is it really?" Once you don't care what happened yesterday, and then if it's useful in your helping of your brothers, then it will come up. But just stay really, really clear on what your desire is. Because if your desire is an interest in knowing where you came from, then it really isn't going to help you stay still and allow the split to be healed. That's the clarity I received from being with this. And I just also love that non-duality in general teaches that the only moment that exists is this one. So the past is only a story held in the mind in this moment, right? Based on that statement. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Cindy. Sometimes I think I'm just trying to think of my own experience, and I'm not going to go on here, but when I was really interested in karma, um, there was some sense of it softening my experience. It sort of it relieved a little bit of my guilt. Like, it just gave an explanation that supported a new sense of self. Maybe this is why I behave that way. It's not because I'm a bad person. It's because blah blah blah. And there's incremental use in that, but it's only incremental. Um, because one of the thing it says, this course will lead to something quite different than past life readings because it points only to the future. It leads to a future that you will know. There was a past, but it does not matter. It does not explain the present or account for the future. So, Chuck, come to the head of the table.
It's, I'm jumping in. I never got a chance to read a lot of that, but I ahead of time. But I'm jumping in because I'm fascinated with this. I did get exposed to Edgar Casey and all of that before I acknowledged that I was an alcoholic and got into the 12-step recovery program. So I remember his mind was the builder, and also some karma kind of things being brought up was, well, when I came in, the reason I've used this in being genetically predisposed for my alcoholism, because both my parents were full-blown alcoholics. Although my mother, I think my dad had some genetic background. My mother didn't. She was a one drink a person for a few years. They used to take my brother and I to the bars with them. And my mother, I just tried to keep up with my dad, and she was just one drink. And eventually, something happened and she got into it. So when I talk about mine, I talk about, being probably genetically predisposed, but going kind of in line with where Cindy is, once I got accepted it and I got into the 12-step program and was able to look at there was people around that were they were always discussing and having issues around blaming somebody else to blame rather than taking responsibility. And so my take on it from that perspective has always been I, that I think that I didn't blame my parents, because I kind of, from my Casey experience, was saying that I picked them to deal with some kind of karmic dealings in my life. So I picked the parents I had, knowing what they were going to be. And I would talk about my experiences relative to my dad and my mother. They had a commercial on TV. I can't remember, some investment or insurance thing where the guy said, you can just earn it. We come in by just earning it. So I used to say when I led sometimes that I thought there was evidence to support the genetic predisposition, but there was also ample evidence that you could just earn it. And I took my mother as an example of that, of earning it. And I said, I really don't care if I inherited it or if I earned it or if I got it off a toilet seat. I was just grateful that the whole thing brought me to experience the 12-step program, which really nurtured and bloomed me into growing in the spirituality. I had to Edgar Casey a little bit, but that was through that and the open spirituality that the 12-step program, that led me to eventually Neil Donald Walsh, and then Gary Renard and the Disappearance of the Universe, and then the Course in Miracles. Actually, I had the Course in Miracles from the Edgar Casey days. It was sitting on my bookshelf because I didn't understand any of it after. But anyway, all around the karma stuff, I I used that somewhat as an explanation without blaming anybody and just taking responsibility. So I don't know how that fits. And the only other thing I'll say now, get obvious, somebody else can speak. I can't remember the name, but there was somebody that we had not too long ago in the Getting Truth Everywhere, that and then he talked about his preparation for a life, or coming in and choosing different things because of what he had to deal with and was going to that kind of thing. So I don't know how that relates to this. I just thought I'd throw it out and get some more input from you. Thanks.
That's a good point. That gosh, was that Christian Sundberg?
Yeah, I forgot his
Christian
name.
Sundberg. Yeah. That would be an interesting conversation. Thank you for that reminder, Chuck, and for that share. Mel.
Hi
Hi
everyone. I this is kind of maybe a little bit off, but on the paragraph 6, I kind of, something spoke to me on that. It's on the page, is it 220? On
You want to read it?
yeah, well, it's the part where he says, I once told you that the atonement will not be complete until all the children of God have come home. We do not care about where they have been or what they have done. We would not want to evaluate their past any more than we want to evaluate them. And that made me think, I went back to, thinking about the historical Jesus. And it brought to mind to me, the parable where he talks about the sheep. He has, there's 90 sheep, there's 100 sheep, and one wanders off, and he leaves the 99 to go back, to bring back the one that had wandered off. And how, so in a sense, it's kind of saying, nothing can happen unless everybody, the complete. And it doesn't matter what they've done. It's just calling them back home. And so and the same thing with the prodigal son. It didn't matter what he had done. It's when he turned to come back and join, again, that's what was most important. And I just saw this coming through in the Course of Miracles, that same sort of understanding, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then the next paragraph, it says, and I think it's very true, it's almost impossible for the mind to look at some past life readings totally without judgment of any kind, right? So don't evaluate, right? It has nothing to do with what you are, because the non-dual teachings basically tell us that the personal self does not exist. So who's having all these past lives? The personal self. It's just a story. Thank you. Anything else, Mel?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Good pointer. Patricia, and then Chuck has his hand up still. Do you just... Okay. You're good? All right, Patricia.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Love this reading. It's interesting as opposed to what I learned studying Buddhism for 25 years, which is karma is about cause and effect. My behavior this way will affect me in this way. And by allowing myself to take responsibility and be accountable, then allows me, this was the basis of it, then will allow me to be free. And from that perspective, coming back to the moment is part of that freedom, because it's an either or. So that's where it's non-dual, cause and effect. But when they come together, then that moment is in the here and now. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask anyone who knows about cause and effect with A Course in Miracles if they want to say anything about cause and effect from A Course in Miracles standpoint. What that brings to my mind is, and please jump in, there is only one cause, and that is Source. So A Course in Miracles teaches cause and effect, I think, a little differently. It's interesting, Patricia, because the way that you described it with Buddhism is similar to what A Course in Miracles teaches, but in a different way. It's that you treat the other as yourself, and that the atonement or the at-one-ment is really what we're trying to understand and be. That's where we're headed. And so when we forgive, we, in essence, speed up the atonement. And these are different levels of information. So we get to this level confusion where something in the material world applies, but it has a different law than the spiritual realm, right? So
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
please
Um,
do.
No, I think that that's an important part because the forgiveness in the cause and effect and using behavior as an example, because it really did pertain to behavior and thinking. So this is the way I think about this causes this. So I think the connecting word here, which brings them both together, is forgiveness. The forgiveness of the cause, let's say, brings it into connection with the effect. If that makes sense, if I'm making any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to bring bad karma to myself, so
Mhm.
I am good, right? A Course in Miracles is actually more direct than that. It says, goodness is always for yourself, right?
Mm.
Because you are the other. Right? And I'm not familiar enough with Buddhist teachings. You are way more familiar than I am.
Okay. This is A Course in Miracles. I understand.
No, but I would invite your wisdom, your Buddhist wisdom, if you have something to add to that.
What I would add to that, it's that process is, yes, it's about taking responsibility. It's about not blaming, not doing this, not pushing it away, but taking responsibility and doing something about it. So, in other words, stop whining and get with the program so that you can come back to the now.
That's another way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing
Well,
wrong.
but it's also similar to the Course of Miracles, isn't it?
Yep.
Is there a connection? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, as the Course says, there are many paths, all leading to the same place. And I would definitely count Buddhism there. And Sandra says, forgiveness then is the recognition that there's nothing to forgive. That's what Cindy said. And Sandra said, I thought A Course in Miracles definition of forgiveness is that what you thought happened didn't happen. And Sandra asks, is that wrong? And I think she knows the answer to that. It is not wrong. No, you're absolutely right. It didn't happen. Right. Which is kind of the where we are and talking about karma, this whole thing about past lives. You know, they didn't happen. It's a story in time, right? It's just a story in time. Right. So we can talk more about that. Let me get to David and then Josephine. This is a fertile mix, isn't it?
Oh, am I up yet? Are you ready?
Yep. Bring
Okay,
it on.
I have a question. You said there is only one cause, and that is source. And okay, now does that only pertain to reality? Does that only pertain to what I would classify as true and good uh, information? Or I mean, how about illusions and bad thoughts and destructive things that come to my you know you know are those caused by source as well? Things that I determine are negative or harmful or destructive.
It's a great question. So when we talk about cause and effect, that implies duality, doesn't it? Because we have a cause and then we have an effect. Right? There is only one cause, and there are no personal thoughts. So what the ego perceives as a bad thought or an uncomfortable thought comes from source. It arises within source. And you, as source, who have temporarily fallen asleep to your true self, can use that negative thought, that discomfort, as a way to ask, what is true? What am I? So it's source waking itself up.
And so, and so if I determine it negative, that's just a judgment on my part. What comes up comes up. Is that what you're saying?
Right. It's the egoic mind that judges a thought as unworthy or negative, right? It can feel very uncomfortable, but from the non-dual teaching, there is only one mind, and it goes to sleep to itself and then it wakes up. It goes to sleep and it wakes up. Why does it do that? Francis Lucille, it plays the game of hide and seek with itself. So the egoic mind, the mind asleep, will say, oh, that's a negative thought. I shouldn't have that thought. It will judge its own judgment, right? So we need to get comfortable with negative thoughts, quote unquote, negative thoughts, as just arising within the space of awareness.
Okay.
Just arising. What I am, what you are, what we are in truth is that consciousness. And there's nothing else, David.
It's almost like I keep quoting Shakespeare, but I think that's because I don't quite get it. There are no negative thoughts, but thinking makes it so. And so I'll have a thought and it appears to me to be negative or harmful or destructive, whatever. That's because I'm afraid to face it. I'm afraid to look at it in non-judgmental in a non-judgmental frame of mind. Say, okay, maybe it didn't even happen. Maybe it's just I thought it happened, or I thought it might happen, or I'm afraid it will happen, and just look at it and say, is this true? And if it is, okay, then I can all right, I accept that this is true, or I accept that I believe it's true, and just okay, and then just move on. Does that make sense?
I would invite you to get more comfortable with there not being anyone who chooses. The only choice that there is to accept that what we are, what you are, what I am, in truth, is the consciousness.
Okay. So everything is consciousness, and there's no good, bad, or indifferent. It's just everything is.
Everything is, yes, and you are that awareness.
Okay.
That awareness. So
Yeah.
when there's the temptation to judge a thought as being a bad thought, then perhaps ask, who is doing this judging? Who is doing the judging? Investigate the judgment. Investigate it.
Uh-huh.
Who's judging? I am. I'm judging. I am judging. Well, who am I? Who is this I who's judging? Is it David?
Mm-hmm.
Is it David who's judging? Well, who is David? Well, David can be old or can be young. David can be happy or sad. David is many different things, but there is one constant, unchanging awareness that is present. And that's what holds David
Mm-hmm.
in all of the different facets that arise as David and
Mm-hmm.
David's story. And that's what you truly are. Whatever sees David isn't David. Whatever sees David and knows David isn't David. It's awareness, consciousness.
Okay. So if something happens, and I just I don't, I could look at it with ego, I could look at it with from David, but neither one of those is who I am, or who I need to look at everything totally objectively from a point of view of awareness.
Yes. Ask, who am I? Who am I?
Who is noticing this? Who is seeing this? Who is feeling this?
And yes, and not in an intellectual way, but in an experiential way. So experiencing the unlimited awareness that is arising now within your awareness. And get to know that. Become familiar with that. Love that. Love that. That's the foundation of the self.
Thank you.
Thank you. Josephine.
My takeaway from this discussion, which I find extremely helpful to my understanding about a number of things. I have been fascinated with the idea of past life experience, have been wanting to do, regression analysis to find out, as we had discussed earlier, thinking that, oh, this will help me understand my present, and of course, move forward. The idea of forgiveness, the depth of understanding, which I feel that it is really, forgiveness is a radical forgiveness, which is it never happened. So there really is nothing to forgive. And karma, the past, so having the influence on what is happening now and what will be happening. All of these things I have been thinking about separately, but as important and useful for my understanding present. But what I'm taking away from this discussion, and it may be wrong, but it's what I'm sensing, is that none of that matters. The only thing that matters is the now. Whether it's helpful for our thinking about something or it isn't, it's really irrelevant. We have to just focus on, as you say, understanding who I am, and all these other things about the past and whether I have karma, the forgiveness, all of that is unnecessary to focus on, irrelevant, and focus on the now and how that is helping me plot the
Yes.
future. And so
Yes.
that's my takeaway from this discussion. And thank you so much, because I think it takes away a lot of the confusion and the searching in my mind for other things. I have to go laser on the now, and I think that would be my most helpful endeavor.
Thank you. Thank you, Josephine. And Mel may want to, after Cindy, kick in here. I just want to share a very brief Francis Lucille story. He talks about the emperor with no clothes, and how all of the clothing that we wear is actually, he takes the story of the emperor with no clothes and moves it into a different teaching. All the clothing we wear, past lives, are just another article of clothing that just hide the true self. The true self is now, and it's completely naked, totally naked and fresh in this moment. It is transparent. It is light. And so past lives and bringing the past in to define the present and explain the present is just burdening yourself with these article of clothing, putting more and more stuff on top of the pure, pristine awareness, the I am awareness with which we move into every new moment. We move from the place of I am I am, I am. And whatever arises is what arises within the space of our awareness. And we do that and then we forget. And we do that and then we forget. And we do that and then we forget. And it's all okay.
And Amy, I find this extremely helpful in what we often do, or I often do, of regret about the past, not really forgiving self about what I have or haven't done. I come back to it is really irrelevant. It didn't really happen, and whether it did happen that I believe it happened or not is unimportant. It's the focusing on the now, and I like that the visual of the emperor with no clothes. I am visualing myself with none of the baggage that I have been bringing with me because it doesn't matter. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to forgive it. I don't have to worry about my past experience forming who I am now. Let go of it all. Let go of it all and just deal with the now. So this is very relieving for me.
Yes. I am free. I am free. I am free.
Yes.
Yes. Cindy and then Mel.
I'll be quick. I just wasn't going to lower my hands when it didn't feel because, in this room, you can't really do that, right? When I was listening to David, my attention went to workbook lesson 170, this idea of good thoughts and bad thoughts and evil thoughts. And I just felt to read, what Jesus says we are to say that comes from lesson 170. And which just says you make what you defend against. And by your own defense against it, it is real and inescapable. Lay down your arms, and only then will you perceive it false. So, this idea of giving value to thoughts and saying, because we're all just thoughts in the mind of God, right? So, deciding some are good thoughts and some are bad thoughts is creating, an experience. And when we practice awareness, everything we're talking about, and step back, there's a natural flow and things happen. But it's just what came up that I wanted to share. And now I'll mute for Mel. I can't believe this hour just flew.
I can't either. And David's asked a really good question. So Mel, you're on, and then David.
Okay. Well, two things. One was when Josephine was talking about being burdened, that did remind me of, Jesus is saying about it's harder for a rich man, rich in beliefs and opinions, whatever, to get to the kingdom of heaven. That's what was the burden. But besides that, I was also wanted to comment a little bit about being careful about saying like the present moment. The present moment kind of does suggest in time, like there's a past and future, like the present moment is just this little piece in between the past and present. But there, as Shannon mentioned, there is no time, and the mind is what manufactures time, and the mind works in time, and that's where it's all coming from. So there's not a present moment. There's just what is. It just is, and yeah. So I just
Thank
want to. Sometimes we call with being in the now. You can't be in the now because you can never not be now. You are now.
Absolutely. That's such a good insight. There is only now. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. And we are being it. We are not in it. We are being it. Thank you, Mel. That was really important. And David says, does I am only exist in awareness? And my response was, I am is awareness. It is. I am. I am now, right now.
Well, I think because a few months ago, whenever it was, we were talking about I am, and I think you told me that maybe I'm wrong, that I am did not exist. There was only awareness. There is no I am.
I don't remember that, but that's entirely possible. So I am. Rupert takes issue with, and so does Francis actually now, with using I am. Rupert's early teachings were, who am I? Well, I am I. And who is I? It is amness. It is am. It is right now. What is aware now? And what is aware now is just awareness. There's no name to it.
So is there no difference between now awareness and I am?
Words are just words. I think there is no difference.
Okay, I'm not doing a gotcha here. I'm really trying to understand.
No, that's no worries, David. That's great because if you need clarification, then we all do.
Okay.
Right? There are many words, but I think that we've talked a little bit about this before, that we are just being, we are just ising, right? We're ising in now, right? Just boom. That's ising. That's it. Is. It seems to have this, all these different articles of clothing on, the hat, the shirt, the gloves, the shoes, everything that we think is us, but we aren't that. We are the transparent isness, eternal, open. And the invitation is to get to know that. The ego will say, that's boring. There's nothing in there in just ising. But explore it. And that's a whole other class. We should have a whole other gathering on just ising. Right. So thank you, David.
Well,
Chuck.
thank you. So now I mean, I learned some stuff, but I also know I learned what I need to learn. And that's even better.
That's really good. That's really good. Thank you. Chuck.
I'm just speaking to clarify in my own mind all the different stuff. As I hear the I am was I am, I was before whatever was, and I've heard so that it equalized it. I listened to Muji on some of his things, and he says awareness never came, cannot go, and also sometimes equates with just I am with all of that too. So I'm not. That's in my mind is a kind of all become the same thing. But I don't know if that helps or confuses or.
It does actually, Chuck. It's good because we're trying to use words to explain the unexplainable. Awareness implies being aware of something, doesn't it? But it just isness. Isness.
Isness, I guess that's the word.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. It is 4:59. I'm going to read our closing invocation and say thank you. Next week, we will read chapter or section 8, God's Higher Court. And I will be in touch with Cindy about anything, if there's anything other than that, but Cindy will post that. So I want to just say thank you to all of us. Cindy says yes. And just ask you to just come back into your ising. Just come back to your ising. Ising is so silent. Being, just being. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, fire worshiper, lover of leaving, This is not a caravan of despair. It does not matter that you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Still come, and yet again. We will see you tomorrow, most of you, but same time next week, we'll look at section 7 or section 8 on page 221, God's higher court. Love us. Thank you. And August just emailed me.